So Jake, it's been a busy week.
Really good signings in my eyes. Managing to get Ruben back. Obviously, he was always the number one target. He had an unbelievable season last season. I always had a hunch that if he couldn't get full-time football, that he'd like to come back. And absolutely delighted to have him back.
Yeah, I mean, Ruben had a fantastic season, and nerves of steel to do that Paninka. What were you thinking when he did that?
Obviously, like he said in his interviews, I didn't want him to do it. He'd done it at Welling, hadn't he? So in the back of your head, you think if they'd done their homework and he'd do it. But if anyone was going to do it, it was going to be Ruben. Yeah, he's just been, like I say, he's been absolutely brilliant for us. He's been brilliant in the changing room. He's been brilliant for the boys. He plays, so far ahead of his years as such. So calm, and absolutely delighted for him to stay.
Dikari Sheriff has joined from Billericay, great little winger.
Yeah, he came to my attention really when I first come back. He was at Eastbourne at the time, and he was available for a loan, and we tried to get him, but back then no player wanted to come here. It was really difficult. Obviously, where we were right down the bottom of the league, and players don't want to join that or be part of that. So I sort of, I really liked what I saw of him. And then I tried to get him in the summer, but obviously he chose Billericay over us, and really pleased to finally get him. He's someone that can play across the front. He's got great attributes. He's got that left foot that is difficult to get the ball off him. He's sharp. He goes past players, and I think he's got huge potential. And I think there's, I don't think his numbers are as good as what they should have been with the talent he's got. And I'm hoping we can unlock that, and I really hope we've got a real gem.
Of course, the whole squad was offered to stay for this season if they wanted. What's the feedback been so far?
Yeah, I mean, after having such a great season, I felt it was the right thing to do. But I'm also obviously in the back of my mind, we are a step up, and obviously we were there a couple of years ago, and I know what we're walking into. I've been open and honest with all of them. Really pleased for the boys that have so far signed up, and obviously there's been quite a few of them. So really delighted with the core we got, and still in talks with a few of the others. Obviously, Roman's been away on international duty, so we have talks with Roman, but I'm hopeful that he'd like to stay. Cisse's ongoing. Joe Tennant's ongoing. Obviously Ennie's decided to leave, which I think is probably the best decision for everyone. He was an absolute, he was brilliant for us last year. What a guy, what a gentleman. Didn't quite work out for him in regards to the football. I just felt that if he had managed to get a couple, he would have gone on to get a few more. But he was a massive part in it. But I think it was probably the right time for him to move on, to go and get some games. A decent level. I think the experience he had here would definitely help him. I think he'd be a better player off the back of it, and I'm really sort of, I'll keep a lookout for Ennie, and I really hope he, gets some goals wherever he goes next.
Yeah, he was very popular here, wasn't he? All the fans loved him as well, and he he didn't get a lot of games, but when he did play, he gave it his all, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Tamas as well.
Yeah.
Tamas hopefully is coming back. Again, Tamas will probably have a decision to make because, quite rightly so, that these boys want to play. I felt that Tamas really improved. Obviously, he come from step 5 when he come here, so it took a little bit of adjusting. But again, an absolutely great guy. So we're hoping to see him pre-season and see where that goes. And obviously, Big Jez again, another great guy. So positive. And I felt, and I said it to them, they don't realise what big a part they played, although they obviously would have liked to have played a lot more minutes, and I appreciate that and understand that, but the dressing room was unbelievable last year, and that was the reason why we were successful. It's difficult, because you need a big squad, and the boys want to play, but obviously you can only pick 11. But I thought all the boys that didn't play as much as they would have liked, when they did play, they done really well. And on a couple of occasions, I felt they were a little bit unlucky to find themselves out the side.
Of course, a huge signing was Mitch, wasn't it? Mitch Walker staying for another season, great goalkeeper. But of course, Jordan was back up, came in last season. Of course, Claudio played a part as well. What's the situation with them two?
Yep. Obviously, it's a really difficult situation because, obviously we've signed Mitch. I'd like both of them to stay. I'm hopeful both will stay. But obviously I've got to work to a budget, so I'll be in talks with. I've spoken to him on a couple of occasions, They both want to play games of football as well, and they know they're not going to be a starter here, obviously because of Mitch, how big a player he is for us. But we'll see how that unfolds, and obviously they're both welcome back here to at least do pre-season, and then maybe we look to loan them, or we'll see where it goes. It is a little bit up in the air, the goalkeeper situation.
Now, in terms of future signings, I know you're talking to lots of people at the moment. What's the sort of wriggle room that you've got in terms of numbers now?
We've got room for a couple more. We feel where we need to strengthen. Obviously, being in the league a couple of years ago has actually helped us because we're not going into it blind. Although we didn't, get great results when we were in the South previously, we picked up a few wins, and we got to see sort of the standard. And so I'd like to think we know what we need. Then it's obviously trying to find them boys to fit into the budget. And fit into the ethos of what we want to do here, and that won't change. Like I've said all along, if the right guy with the right experience comes along, then of course we'll look at it. But mainly we're going to go with what we did last year regarding the remit and the ethos. Young, hungry players who've had experience, desperate to kick on and have more, be part of a real good team ethic. Work their socks off and understand what it takes to win game of football.
Yeah, one of the most pleasing things must be that you've been able to keep all the strikers, because obviously we scored lots of goals, 20 plus goals, all of them, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was a concern, wasn't it, last year? And it's always a concern. I speak to lots of managers now, and everyone wants the guys that can put the ball in the back of the net, because that's the hardest thing to do. Going into last season, this time last season, did we realistically, think we'd have 3 guys that would score 20 goals? No, of course we didn't. We always felt with Nick Hadge. Nick Hadge is a guy, since I've known, and obviously, he's a local lad, so I know a lot of people that know him. He's always scored goals, and he always gets chances. I felt his confidence was low when I come in. But we did hope that George would get lots of goals, and obviously he started like a train, didn't he? And then he had a little bit of a blip, but he went on to be right up there in the league's top scorers. And I think George has got a point of proof. He'll be hungry. He knows that what he needs to improve on, and I know he's been working really hard already. He's desperate to do well, and I feel that there's no reason why he can't go on and score goals in this league. Baps was, took us all by surprise, really. Baps himself and us. I think he's one of them lads that is almost too versatile and hadn't really nailed down a position. Speaking to him this time last season, he was pretty adamant that he wanted to play in the middle of midfield. And he did, and he done a good job for us. But then he sort of found himself back on the left, and the amount of assists and goals he got was incredible, really. But he's a super talent, Baps, and he's an incredibly hard worker, and he's worked so hard at his game. So that was his just rewards, really, for all he's done for last season to get them numbers. And again, he's another one that he's coming into this league again. He's experienced it. He knows my feelings on what he needs to do, and I think he understands what he needs to do. And there's definitely more growth from Baps. You watch him in training; he's a fantastic talent. He's an incredible footballer. And we'll see where there is a possibility he might end up in the midfield berth, or where he's been most effective for us so far, out on the left.
Yeah, another player that, of course, has agreed to sign is Luca. I thought he had a great season last year, and he was versatile as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. Obviously, we brought him in initially to be a centre half, and then obviously Jacob became available, didn't he? Like as the season went on, Ponty got suspended, didn't he, when he got sent off here at Folkestone, and we put him in there for a few games, and I thought he'd done really well. Horsham away, especially. We knew he could play in there, and that was another reason why we took him, because of his versatility. And then when he sort of forced his way into that midfield berth, and then obviously when Harrison left, he made it his own, and I thought he had a tremendous season. Yeah,
and of course Jacob Menzer, as you mentioned, joined not halfway, but sort of in the first part of the season. He was a massive signing, and his mobility is going to be very important for us.
Yeah, he's got he's got all the attributes you look for him, isn't he? A defender. He's a great athlete. He's a great guy as well. He's big amongst the boys. Everyone looks up to him and respects him. Always with a smile on his face, Jacob. Again, he knows. He knows what I think can improve him. And this is the first time really that he's signed early for a club, because he always wants to better himself, and he's trialled at higher clubs and done pre-seasons and never really had a steady season. So I actually think really looking forward to working with him this year, and I actually think there's more growth from him as well, and I'd like to think he's only going to get better.
And of course, local boy Wilco's signed as well.
Yeah, he signed really early. I was really pleased with that. I was a little bit concerned he'd look to go elsewhere, because obviously his season was a little bit disrupted. Obviously, he didn't join us for pre-season early last year, which sort of put him down the pecking order a little bit. And in that time, we'd signed Alfie. But I think George is a fantastic talent. I think out of all the boys that didn't get as many games as they deserved, I thought it was Wilco. I think he trains unbelievable, and when he did get an opportunity, I actually thought he changed the game on quite a few occasions here. A super talent. Really pleased that he re-signed. Really pleased he wants to be part of it, and hopefully he can play a lot bigger part than he played last year. Because like I say, I think he's a fantastic footballer. And obviously we've got a few of the other boys, the younger boys as well. Henry Young, who when I first come in, again I went on record, I felt he was Dover's best player. When I watched them few games before I actually come in to work with Mitch, I remember seeing him and people saying, what a great talent Henry is. And again, a bit like Wilco, a little bit unfortunate, not to get the games he probably deserved. Another great lad. I think it went a little bit against him last year, like I told him, regarding the balance of the team, nothing on ability. We're pretty sure that Henry will be part of it next year. Hopefully, he can force his way in. If not, maybe again we'll look to get him some games out there. And obviously Matty had a great great season last year. He had such positive feedback from his loans. He did pick up a little bit of a bad injury at the end of last season, so we'll see where we go with that one. And obviously we've re-signed Kieran. We signed him last year, and we knew that we weren't sure where he was going to be 100% with the foot injury he had, and unfortunately that went against him. He managed to get himself back fit, so we're going to give him another opportunity, and he's got again another lad with all the attributes. Looking forward for him kicking on, whether that's with us to start with, or again he gets games to start with on loan. We'll see where that goes.
I know you were pleased to bring Ryan in at the end of the season on loan from Tonbridge, so you must be even more delighted that he's committed for this season. Yeah,
really pleased. Obviously, I knew a lot about Ryan. I really saw firsthand how good he was when we played in that behind closed doors at Tunbridge. So I think again that sort of fell on our lap at a perfect time. A little bit like Jacob, really. It's good that I want to encourage. Like I've said, I'd rather have local boys. I think it's important. Obviously, Ryan's a massive fan's favourite here, and I thought he come in and done really well, and made a bit of a difference. To be honest, a lad with plenty of experience. Obviously, he's experienced this level, so looking forward to working with him from the start, and I'm sure he's going to be a huge asset to us.
And of course, everyone was delighted to see Alfie Matthews commit for another season. He really found his quality in the playoffs, didn't he, with those free kicks at Billericay and then the header in the final.
Yeah, obviously, Alfie's got something different, isn't he? From his pedigree, he's got unbelievable talent. I remember like early on when he came and he was doing, they were taking shots in the warm-ups, and I was seeing some go in the top corner from dead ball, and you're thinking, this looks a little bit special. Obviously, it was a new position for him. He'd never really played in that position, especially the 8 last year, where he found himself in for quite a few games. We did manage to get him up higher up the pitch, obviously, when Ryan Hansen came, and I think that really sort of helped him. And you always felt that when it come to the moment that it would take an extra little bit of quality, and it just so happened to be Alfie, and I was absolutely pleased for it and delighted for him. Really, it sort of had to be him, didn't it? Really. and obviously again delighted that he's re-signed. I always thought he would, because I know how comfortable he is here, and again he knows what we feel that he can kick on. I do feel he needs to be a little bit fitter. Obviously, he's going to learn the role because he hasn't really played in that, and I want him get him in the box a little bit more than he did. I think he'd rather bend one in from 30 yards rather than get in and score them goals. But he's got the capabilities to get in the box and score them third man run goals, because he can score with both feet, he can score with his head, he's brave. So hopefully we'll see a little bit more of that from Alfie next year. Then obviously talking about the ballers, Francis. And I remember, when we heard that the boys were going in there, I said that Francis would be the best, didn't I? And he's been absolutely class in that. He's such a good guy, Francis. Lovely guy, always smiling. Obviously, he found it a little bit hard for a time. We gave him an opportunity, and as well as he did, he wasn't quite getting the numbers. So that's why sort of Baps ended back out there. I'm pretty confident we'll see Francis here again next year. I really hope we do. I've let him get on with the ballers situation, so we'll see if we can have chats with Francis, see where he's at. And again, another one with huge talent, and there's definitely more to come from Francis.
Have you been tuning into the Ballers League? I know you've been watching avidly.
Yeah, we went up there. I took the boys kindly got some tickets, so I went up there to watch it with my family, and but all my family really enjoyed it, and the boys have been putting it on Monday nights, and if I've been in about, I've generally tuned in and watched it. Obviously it was a difficult time for us last season, and it's easy for me to say like now, because obviously it worked out for us. But is part of the way of the world now, isn't it? Football, when everything's moved on, and I think we just got to be open-minded regarding them situations. And as long as we're, talking to each other, we'll see where all that goes in the future.
Now, in terms of the squad, you said that, you've highlighted areas that you feel you need to strengthen. What are those areas, would you say? Where do you feel we're going to have to step up? We obviously got to step up in all areas of the pitch, but where for you do you think needs strengthening?
Well, I think if you look at our goals against column, I feel we let in far too many goals from set pieces, corners, free kicks. So that definitely needs to be looked at, even more so in the level we're going into, because the boys are bigger. Obviously, more work goes into set pieces, so we're definitely going to need to be stronger in that department. Because I do feel with the forwards we're going to score goals. So we've really got to build from the back. We've got to be a lot harder to beat than we were. Although we done really well last year, but there was lots of sloppy goals, and ultimately them sloppy goals probably cost us the championship. Obviously losing Mitch was a big part of that, as well as Jordan did when he come in. Regarding looking to strengthen in them areas, really forward wise, I'm really happy that we managed to re-sign all the boys that got the goals last year, and like I say, with the Carey, with Kenny, and with Francis, that's a formidable forward line.
Now, of course, you've been at higher levels than this as a player and as a coach, but that was your first season as a manager last year. Obviously, you tasted National League South as a manager when you came in for Mitch. What did you think you learned from your previous spell as a manager in the National League South?
Not a lot, really. It's difficult coming in when it's you're coming in cold. It's a really difficult situation for the club in general. It was difficult for Mitch. He'd obviously taken over from Hess, hadn't he? And I don't really recall what he inherited, but I know how hard it is to recruit here. It's really difficult, and obviously the club was on a bit of a downward spiral. So Mitch would have had his he would have had his hands tied to a certain degree, trying to get the boys he wanted. Like I said, I was really open with it last year. Other than Mitch, I didn't get any of my number one targets, and it's always been a bit like that here. You got to be realistic. It's difficult to attract the boys here. Although obviously we don't train here, and that's the reason why we don't train here. Because if we did train here, we wouldn't be able to recruit any of that type of boy. It's just too far for them to travel. So. We're set up again to travel further up the line, and this year it looks like we've got proper venues for both evenings, which is going to be a massive help. We can do a lot more work than we done last year. So yeah.
Where are you going to be training?
Well, it's not totally confirmed, but Tuesday we're going to be back at Elsford, where we have been for a couple of years. Super facility, and they've been really helpful. And I can't thank them enough for allowing us to sort of squeeze us in, really, because their club's growing and they've got a massive youth set up. So they've honoured what they've allowed us to do last year, and hopefully where it's not secured yet totally, but a little bit further up the line, so a lot more convenient for the majority of the boys, although obviously the local boys aren't happy. I'm not overly happy of having to travel up there, but I know it's what's best for the club, and ultimately every decision that you make is what's best for the majority.
Yeah, I mean, I was interviewing DeCarey, for example, and it took him 3 hours to get here.
Yeah, it is difficult, the travel aspect of it. We try and sign as many localish boys as we can, of course we do, but when the odd one comes up from a little bit further afield and they're available and they fit into our ethos and budget and structure, we obviously we got to do what we got to do. We've got to try and get the best players here, and especially with DeCarey, like I say, I'm really looking forward to working with him, and I really think the fans are going to be excited, and to unlock what he probably feels. He's had a couple of seasons where he hasn't been able to fulfil what he feels that he should have produced, and it's been difficult because he's been at clubs with a lot of money and a lot of competition, and managers that chop and change. But as everyone knows, I like to have a bit of stability. So if you get your shirt, as long as you're putting in a shift, you'll generally keep it.
He was telling me he's quite excited about being an underdog. He feels Dover are the ultimate underdogs next season, and he thinks that's going to suit us.
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, we all thought that last year, didn't we? And then it was apparent very early on in pre-season that we'd assembled a good squad. I mean, of course we're going to be the underdogs. There's 11, 12, 40 full-time sides, so from that sense we're going to be the underdogs. But we've had a lot of boys that have tasted the level. Obviously, I've had a lot of experience in the level, or obviously mainly as a player and an assistant. But we know the levels, and we are confident. We obviously need to add a few more, and it is early. There's lots of boys still available, and we keep talking to them, and hopefully pick the right ones to fit into the jigsaw. But it's difficult for me to say where I think we're going to end up, but I'm hoping for a hell of a lot more positive season than we've had in the previous few years at this level.
Now the lads are back on July the 1st. You probably can't wait, can you? I know we all get footballed out, don't we? Start of June, but must be excited about that.
Yeah, of course. I'm obviously looking forward to the fixtures to come out, and looking forward really to nailing down the squad so we know exactly where we are. But like I say, really excited. I think I went on record saying at the end of last season that the club wasn't ready for it, but looking what's happened since, the chairman's been absolutely brilliant. He really has. I think he, like me, was a little bit nervy to start with. Maybe it was a season too early, but there's never a right time, is there? And I think actually as it's panned out, especially with the boys staying, I think we would have lost a hell of a lot of boys if we hadn't gone up. So I think that's gone in our favour massively. The chairman's managed to find a little bit more, which obviously we're really appreciative to. Season tickets are looking good, although obviously we want to fill this place, and that's going to be really important. And like I've gone on record, it's got to be. Even with the difficult times, we got to urge the supporters to keep coming, and that was a little bit of a negative last year. Which again, like I've said on record, that I understand it because the negativity previously. But it's tough. Every team's looking to win. You've got no right to win any game of football, and like I've always said, as long as the boys give maximum effort, which I honestly couldn't fault them last year. Maybe other than the Cray Valley game, which was just one of them things that obviously, we didn't start great in the game and sort of never really got going. Other than that, I mean, even the Sittingbourne games, people were really negative after that. But I thought at the time Sittingbourne were a good side, very effective. And obviously they went on to beat Southend and have an incredible season, didn't they? So I think, even then at the time there was a lot of negativity around that. I think that was probably a little bit unjust with, how well they done. And obviously we were a little bit unfortunate with the sending off, weren't we, in the trophy game?
Yeah, but what a fantastic positivity at the end of the season. I mean, we're going into this one on the back of such a massive high, and that's got to be good.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah, the last three games were, worked. It went to absolute plan to a T. They really did. I thought the Billericay game was, an unbelievable game of football. The effort and the energy that the boys put into that. The togetherness. And going a goal down as well, to come back and to beat Billericay, who obviously were the favourites, to beat them at their own ground in that manner was an incredible night, and one that I'm sure will stick in the memory of all the Dover fans. Just like all the big other moments this club has had, it would be right up there.
Now, it's a beautiful day and the pitch is looking lovely, isn't it? I saw the roller out on it earlier. Of course, our home form's going to be massive, isn't it, in this division?
Yeah, I mean, again, I went on record, it was a bit of a shame, wouldn't it? Because obviously that affected the attendances, which has a knock-on effect for everything else. So if we had our away record last season at home, I think, there would have been a lot more positivity than there was during that spell. But at the end of the day, it's just the way it went. Obviously, we did suffer with the pitch last year. The pitch was in beautiful condition this time last year. And we played a couple of games, didn't we, when on hindsight we probably shouldn't have done, and it never fully recovered. So hopefully we'll learn that lesson this year. I know the chairman's working incredibly hard to get the pitch up to standard, and like you say, sitting here today, it's getting there already. And people say maybe we suited 4G a little bit better. Yeah, maybe we did, but I'm confident we can come here and have a good home record next year.
Now, Jake, when are you going to finally get a holiday?
Well, I mean, obviously I couldn't, could I? Because the kids are at school. So looking to go away. Obviously, I'll miss a little bit of pre-season, which is not ideal, but it's only fair that take the family away, and I think I need a break as well, to be honest.
Yeah, and just finally, a word to the fans.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I've seen the season ticket numbers. Really, really positive. Obviously, like me, I'm sure you are really positive for the lads that have re-signed. Obviously, we've added a few. Again, that I'm really, really pleased with. We've had lots of people want to come here, so we can be a little bit more picky this year. Obviously, as long as they fit into the ethos and the structure as such. There'll be a few more signings to make, and I'm really, really positive we're going to have a lot better season than we did last time we were at this level. But again, it's going to be incredibly hard. But we're going to need your support. We've really got to get back to where we were. That match day experience. We're working on that. We understand we need to improve that, and we want to make it, a norm for what you do. Come up on a Saturday afternoon and support the boys. I can assure you that the boys will leave everything out there, and hopefully we'll have enough quality and enough experience and enough nous to pick up results.